Right now on Morning News Now, frigid forecast. A winter storm dumping snow over parts of the flood-ravaged south, heading east as Arctic air sets in across the Midwest and plains. Temperatures could drop as much as 50 degrees below average in some places. We'll tell you when things will finally warm up. Also this morning, more executive orders. President Trump pushing forward with his agenda while his effort to gut the federal workforce faces pushback from some states and doubt in the courts. Last night, the president and Elon Musk dismissing claims that the mass firings are unconstitutional.
They're saying that things are being done unconstitutional, but what they are doing is unconstitutional.
That's always the first thing they do. Yeah. It's in violation of the Constitution. They don't even know what they're talking. Well,
it's absurd.
It's just a con job.
It comes as Mr. Trump said he's firing all remaining Biden-era U.S. attorneys. We will have the latest. Plus, foreign policy fallout. The world reacts to the U.S. cozying up to Russia. We'll speak live with a Ukrainian member of parliament about the new negotiations to end the war without Ukraine at the table. And finally, Man Camp. We're taking an inside look at the new program that promises to turn average Joes into alpha males. That is later this hour. You are well above average.
I don't think I need to go to that or want to go to that. I don't know. We'll find out in a moment.
I just don't like that we said average Joes.
Exactly. I'm a pretty average Joe, honestly. Good to have you with it. I am Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Thanks so much for being here this morning. We're going to begin this hour with the bitter cold weather impacting more than 100 million people in the U.S. The latest winter storm that's now barreling across several southern states, the Carolinas and Virginia. They could see the heaviest snow later today, with more than 10 inches predicted in some areas. Officials along the Gulf Coast warn of a mix of rain and ice that could make for dangerous driving conditions.
Forecasters predict we could see more than 100 new record low temperatures by Friday across the plains and Midwest. One town in North Dakota dropped to negative 45 degrees yesterday, the coldest on record so far this week. This bitter cold is posing an even bigger threat in states like Kentucky and Tennessee, which were recently ravaged by deadly flooding. Officials worry this massive chill could force them to pause water rescues. NBC's Kathy Park is on the ground in Knoxville, Tennessee, with the latest.
Hey guys, good morning from a snowy downtown Knoxville. The snow is starting to fall, and when this is all said and done, we could be looking at up to 3 inches of snow. But it's not just the snow, but millions of people are waking up to dangerously cold temperatures. In fact, the coldest air we've seen all season. And yesterday, winter alerts actually stretched a continuous 1,500 miles from Colorado to the Carolinas. Yesterday in Minnesota, it got so cold, firefighting equipment actually froze over, hampering their emergency response. There were also plenty of reports of crashes, spinouts on major highways across the country. Meanwhile, in Kentucky, as you know, they are reeling from those devastating floods. The governor there is saying that they're not only dealing with a natural disaster, but now a snowstorm on top of that. So that will definitely impede the ongoing recovery efforts. The good news is this is a fast mover. It will be out of the Knoxville, eastern Tennessee area later on this afternoon. However, the cold will be sticking around, and it's an important reminder when wind chills get well below zero, frostbite can set in a matter of minutes. Back to you.
All right, Kathy, we appreciate you being out there.
Well, for more on this winter weather that's hitting tens of millions with either snow or that deep freeze, let's bring in meteorologist Angie Lastman.
Yeah, she's got your Morning News Now weather. Angie, good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning to you. As Kathy just mentioned, this is a fast mover, but still, it's going to be impactful through the day today. And we've got plenty of winter alerts up. No surprise there. 39 million people from parts of the Tennessee Valley extending out east to the Carolinas. This is the general area that's going to deal with that wintry weather, the heavy snow, the potential for some ice accumulation on those roadways. And then farther south on the warmer side of this system, we've got all that heavy rain draped across the Gulf Coast, places like Tallahassee waking up to some wet weather this morning. This is going to be quick to move to the east and eventually offshore. We've got to get through today before we start to see those impacts winding down. But even still, over the next 12 to even 18 hours, we're going to see the heavy snow specifically across parts of southeastern Virginia and North Carolina, as well as those lingering kind of showers across parts of the southeast. As we get into tomorrow, some improvements for some spots, specifically parts of the south. But notice what happens across the Northeast and the Great Lakes. We've got this really cold wind that's going to generate more of that lake effect snow. So we are not dodging the snow showers across that region as we get into tomorrow. But the really impressive snowfall totals, those are going to be centered across parts of Virginia and North Carolina. Notice Norfolk expected over 8 inches. Virginia Beach, you could see anywhere from 6 to 10 inches by the time we wrap up the day today and head into tonight. As far as the ice accumulation, this is what we're concerned about when it comes to the roadways, specifically road travel for I-40, I-95. You can see Kinston all dealing with the potential for up to 1/4 of an inch of ice. That means that we could likely see not just the difficulty on the roads, but tree damage and power outages across this region through the day today. But again, improvements on the backside of that system as we get into tomorrow. What doesn't improve is the temperatures. We are going to see that really cold air kind of settle in and stay with us for a little while longer. And it's quite impressive where you see these cold alerts. I mean, really, from top to bottom of the country, we are dealing with cold weather that has prompted us to see these alerts stay in place through today. Almost 90 million people included in those. And we see why. Temperatures in Minneapolis right now, the actual temperature, -9. But look what it feels like, -25. Even Chicago, this is a little better than what you dealt with yesterday, but still 5 degrees for the actual temperature, feeling like 8 below. As far south as Abilene, 11 degrees for your temperature right now and feeling like -7. So how about later today? Do we see any improvements? Not really, honestly. It just depends on where you live. If you live in Lubbock, sure, you get to 27 degrees. I guess that's an improvement. 8 degrees for Topeka's high temperature today. Chicago, you'll top out at 17. We see parts of the northern plains just single digits through the afternoon hours today. Tomorrow, not quite as cold in some spots, but it's not much of an improvement. We're still running more than 30 degrees below normal across parts of the central plains. 13 degrees is all you're going to get for Kansas City. 30s for Atlanta. Orlando tops out at just 66 degrees. I don't know. That 66 sounds pretty good to me right about now. Teens, guys, as we wrap up our week and head into the weekend for Omaha, we see 30s in Chicago. And honestly, if you're in Chicago, the temperatures today compared to what they'll be in on Sunday, they look a whole lot better. Even Springfield, you get back to the 50s. That goes for Huntsville as well. We just got to wait a little while and potentially break some record lows between now and then.
My dad in Minnesota called me last night after chiseling his phone out of the ice cube that it was wrapped in to tell me to confirm it is freezing.
It is freezing. And even here in New York City, it was brutal yesterday. And
oh, my gosh.
We'll keep it going.
This morning. It's hard to get up. Thanks, Angie.
The Trump administration's bid to reshape the government got a small boost on Tuesday. A federal judge denied an effort by 14 states to immediately block Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency from accessing data systems or making personnel decisions at 7 federal agencies.
The judge wrote that the states failed to show they would be imminently harmed by Musk and Doge's actions. However, she did express some concerns about Doge's power and authority.
For more on this, we're joined now by NBC News White House correspondent Vaughn Hilliard. Vaughn, good morning. Good to have you with us. So help us understand the judge's decision. Where does it leave Democrats who are trying to curtail the Trump administration's push to try and reshape the federal government?
Right. Hey, good morning, guys. Look, this case is not over in its entirety. This is just a decision from federal Judge Chutkan to not issue an immediate restraining order on Doge, Elon Musk, and their activities and their access to personnel data within these multiple federal agencies. At the same time, this was a major lawsuit that was brought by 14 state attorneys generals. And Judge Chutkan, said that merely the possibility that Doge could harm the states, quote, is not enough to halt its activities. Again, this gets to where this case is not over. They can continue to make their case here going forward. This is just not an immediate injunction here. At the same time, this really calls into a lot of questions, as Judge Chutkan acknowledged, that there's a lot of suspicion and a lack of transparency exactly as to what Elon Musk and the Doge team are doing within the agencies. But as she noted, that it'll take proving the harm that is actually being done in real time for the courts to further intervene.
Vaughn, yesterday, President Trump described his relationship with Elon Musk during this interview on Fox News. Let's listen first to a little bit of that.
Well, I respect him. I've always respected him. I never knew that he was right on certain things, and I'm usually pretty good at this stuff. I wanted somebody really smart to work with me in terms of the country, a very important aspect, because I mean, he doesn't talk about it. He's actually a very good businessman. He gets it done. He's a leader. Yeah. He really is. He gets it done.
So, Vaughn, I want to seize on that word leader. Mr. Trump, of course, calling him that, but the Justice Department did say something quite different in fighting a lawsuit that seems to rein in Doge's power, right? Tell us about that.
Right. And actually, if I could real fast, President Trump said that he's always respected Elon Musk. And I just think for fact-checking purposes, back just in 2022, 3 years ago, he was mocking Elon Musk, saying that if it weren't for government subsidies of his various companies and projects, Elon Musk, would be, quote, worthless. But, of course, the relationship has come a long way since then. But yet, you noted here in the court filings, interestingly, the Department of Justice, President Trump's Department of Justice, is not calling Elon Musk the, quote, administrator of Doge, which was the position that was crafted under the executive order that Donald Trump signed on Inauguration Day. And this gets to a lot of the legal wonkiness here, because Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary to President Trump, says that he is just a senior advisor. And this is, in a way, almost to avoid any legal ramifications, because including in that lawsuit from those 14 state attorneys general who said that Elon Musk, as a special government employee, is working outside of the bounds of the Constitution, having not been Senate confirmed in working at such a capacity as this. It goes beyond the limits of what a federal government worker is able to do. That's why it's so noteworthy that the DOJ is almost sort of, in a way, limiting his prominence at the same time that the president himself is sitting there in a Fox News interview at the White House promoting Elon Musk as a, quote, leader.
Vaughn, let's get to another huge headline. Yesterday, we witnessed that meeting between high-level U.S. and Russian officials in Saudi Arabia. The talks were aimed at trying to bring an end to the Ukraine war, but Kyiv was not involved, which has angered Ukraine and the rest of Europe. Tell us what came out of this meeting and just the stunning comments President Trump made afterward.
Right. This is a moment here for President Trump. He spoke yesterday after that meeting that you saw took place between Russian officials, included the Saudis, but Marco Rubio, his national security, Mike Waltz. This is a moment where President Trump is clearly indicating that they are keen on negotiating directly with the Russians, even if Ukraine is not at the negotiating table themselves, which President Zelensky has aired a great deal of skepticism and concern about. Take a listen to President Trump yesterday afternoon talking about Ukraine and their positioning in these negotiations.
I think I have the power to end this war, and I think it's going very well. But today I heard, oh, well, we weren't invited. Well, you've been there for 3 years. You should have ended it 3 years. You should have never started it. You could have made a deal.
Now, of course, objectively, it was not Ukraine that started the war. Russia is the one that invaded 3 years ago Ukraine with missiles and has been on the offensive in an effort to take over Ukraine. And back in 2014, Russia invaded Crimea, killing thousands in their acquisition of Ukraine land. And yet what you heard there from the president of the United States is the suggestion that President Zelensky is losing popularity in this country, that the cities are effectively demolished, essentially is making the case for Ukraine to come to the negotiating table with Russia, and whether it be cede land or make other concessions here. President Trump is not clearly the most sympathetic to Ukraine's situation, and it's even proposed that they give the United States half of their earth minerals in exchange for U.S. further financial support here. So there's a lot on the lines, but clearly Ukraine's partnership with the Trump administration is very different than the one that they had in the Biden administration, guys.
All right, Vaughn, thank you so much.
Well, let's keep this conversation going on the Russia-Ukraine war with Kira Rudik. She's a member of the Ukrainian parliament. Kira, thanks very much for joining us again. Good to see you. So let's start with the clip that we played a moment ago from President Trump that Vaughn was just discussing there. What did you make of his suggestion that Ukraine was responsible for starting the war, that Kyiv had 3 years to make a deal to end this war?
Hello, and thank you so much for having me. Well, as Ukrainian member of parliament and Ukrainian, I can just say that these statements are false. Of course, Ukraine fell a victim of aggression that started by Russian Federation. And during these 3 years, we had paid an enormous and ultimate price for the democratic world to be prepared to get ready. And it is simply unfair to people who lost everything, to people whose relatives are fighting at the front line, and to people who are fighting at the front line, to diminish their sacrifices and the constant fight for the freedom, for the freedom of Ukraine and for the freedom of the free world.
As you know, when we talk about these negotiations, President Zelensky wasn't at the table yesterday. Europe wasn't at the table. Your thoughts on this meeting and this apparent thawing of relations between the U.S. and Russia? I mean, can there be a deal if Ukraine's not part of the talks?
First, I thought that it was U.S. policy not to negotiate with terrorists. Right now, all the terrorists throughout the world see that they can go ahead, annex a territory of another country, commit all kinds of the war crimes, and then just hope to get away with that because they will be listened to and they would be taken into consideration and their opinion would matter. That is unfortunate, and it will not lead to any good result, neither for the United States nor for the democratic world itself. The main question that we are asking and that we did not hear an answer to is, what are the security guarantees? Who or what in the whole world can make sure that Russia will keep their part of the bargain if there is a deal? And that is a baseline to any negotiations. Because you see, here in Ukraine, we have been in this ceasefire since 2014, and there was not a single day when Russia would honor their part of the deal. So how this time will be different? And before we hear the answer to this question, there would be, it doesn't matter who is at the table, right? What matters is, would this be workable solution or not? And from what we see right now, it will not be a workable solution.
Kira, President Trump yesterday also repeated this proposal for Ukraine to hold an election if it wants a seat at the table. Now, the last election was in 2019, but the process has been on hold because of the war and because of martial law. Is an election something you would support? How is that received within Ukraine?
With all due respect, Ukraine's sovereignty freedom that we are fighting for makes it that neither Russian nor American president can define who is the president in Ukraine, when and how we elect our president. As a member of Ukrainian parliament, I can assure you that President Zelensky is representing us because of Ukrainian constitution. As of right now, we do not see that before the martial law is lifted, we can conduct elections in Ukraine. And for that, we will remain united as one front, working together, opposition, president, coalition, everyone, to win the war and to figure out the best way to move forward. After the war is over, we will, of course, conduct the elections, and all Ukrainian people will support that.
Kira Rudik, we appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, and glory to Ukraine.
After a 3-week trial, an L.A. jury needed about 3 hours to find rapper A$AP Rocky not guilty. He was acquitted on 2 felony counts of assault with a semi-automatic firearm. The verdict was met with cheers and hugs from his family. A dramatic moment, as you see right there. The rapper, whose real name is Rakeem Mayers, was facing up to 24 years in prison. This all stemmed from a 2021 incident when he was accused of firing a gun at a former friend. During an argument, his defense argued the gun was only a prop that fired blanks. A$AP Rocky is, of course, Rihanna's longtime partner. She was in the room with their 2 sons when that verdict was announced.
Well, there are still many unanswered questions this morning regarding the crash landing of that Delta Airlines flight in Toronto. The investigation to figure out why the plane flipped over during landing and burst into flames on Monday afternoon is in its earliest stages. Now, all 80 people on board survived the crash. 21 people were injured. NBC News correspondent Stephanie Gosk has the latest from Toronto.
This morning, investigators are focusing on these crucial moments when Delta 4819 hit the runway in Toronto, hoping the flight data and cockpit voice recorders may help explain how this crash could have happened. Everything appeared normal during the descent at first. But when the plane hit the runway, the landing gear on the right appeared to blow off, followed by the wing, sending the plane tumbling, according to NBC News aviation analyst John Cox's review of crash footage.
Investigators are going to look very carefully at exactly what caused that wing to separate.
They will also be looking at what role the wind may have played. Weather reports recorded gusts of up to 40 miles an hour with drifting snow.
The conditions were challenging, but nothing more than professional pilots can handle. The airplane's designed for it. The pilots are trained for it.
Remarkably, all 80 people on board survived.
I was upside down. The lady next to me was upside down. We kind of let ourselves go and fell to hit the ceiling, which is surreal feeling.
Most of the injuries were minor, according to paramedics.
Back sprains, head injuries, anxiety, some headaches, nausea and vomiting.
Delta Airlines says 21 passengers were treated in the hospital for injuries and 19 have been released.
Everything, drop it!
Officials applauding the efforts of first responders and flight attendants.
We saw the most important role that they play in action. The crew of Delta Flight 4819 heroically led passengers to safety.
Oh my! It's something passengers like Peter Kukoff noticed too.
Does it seem now impressive when you look back at it that they handled it the way they did?
Absolutely. I feel like everybody handled it pretty well considering we were in a plane crash.
The wreckage is still on the runway, and it's going to be there likely for at least another day or so. Investigators want to look at it and analyze it while it's still there. They're also looking at the runway itself. Investigators led by Canada tell us that they've retrieved the ever-important black boxes and they have sent them to a lab for analysis. Savannah.
All right, Stephanie, thank you very much.
The crash in Toronto really appears to be a textbook example of how crews on the plane and on the ground should respond to an aviation emergency. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello takes a closer look at how everyone sprung into action after training for the worst-case scenario.
With the wreckage of that regional jet still resting on a Toronto runway, aviation experts say the fact everyone survived is due in no small part to the flight attendants.
Everything, drop it!
Who remained composed yet in charge, ordering passengers to wait as they ensured it was safe to evacuate, then move.
They announced not to get out of their seats, so people were hanging there for, I can't remember how long, but just about a minute, and then they were like, okay, get down.
Veteran flight attendants call it a textbook response.
There were very difficult conditions, directly an inverted plane, where this flight attendant had to find the opening, make that hole, and then shout the commands to get people out safely.
Also textbook, the firefighting response, required to be on scene within 3 minutes. An MIT study shows fatal commercial plane crashes are rare, just 1 in 13.7 million passenger boardings globally.
Release seatbelts! Leave everything!
Like other airlines, Delta flight attendants go through weeks of intense training.
Grab ankles, heads down, stay low!
Recreating the chaos of an emergency.
The FAA requires you to evacuate a plane completely in 90 seconds. You've got to be on your game.
Absolutely, absolutely. The goal is to try to get those customers off the aircraft as quickly as possible, especially in an emergency.
The key is to kick your feet and your arms out and slide down, and let these guys catch you at the bottom.
Commands must be concise and clear.
Leave everything, jump in front!
Leaving purses, bags, and backpacks behind. Tom Costello, NBC News.
All right, our thanks for that great demonstration, Tom. Well, this morning, 7 men from Chile are now facing federal charges for their alleged role in orchestrating burglaries at the homes of several professional athletes, including Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. We've been telling you about these break-ins while athletes were on the road for games. Federal prosecutors in Florida say the men are members of a South American theft ring that stole more than $2 million in watches, jewelry, and cash, among other things. Now, if convicted, the 7 men face a maximum of 10 years each in federal prison.
Much more to come here on Morning News Now, including a victory in the growing movement to try and keep cell phones out of classrooms. Los Angeles School District's cell phone ban now in effect. We're going to tell you how it works.
But up first, progress in the Middle East. The ceasefire between Israel and Hamas continues to hold, with hostages set to be released this weekend. We'll have more when we come back.
We're back with the latest from the Middle East, where that ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas is still holding. Hamas announced Tuesday 6 living Israeli hostages will be released on Saturday, and the bodies of 4 others on Thursday.
In pre-recorded remarks, the leader of the militant group said the bodies of a woman and her 2 infant sons will be handed over. Their kidnapping demonstrated the brutality and horror of the October 7th attacks.
For more on this, let's bring in NBC News correspondent Hala Garani, who joins us from Tel Aviv. Hala, good morning. Thanks for joining us. So this news of the Bibas family, it just came as a shock to so many. It's because Israeli intelligence did not know that they were dead. What more can you tell us about the reaction to this in Israel?
Right, there was no certainty, but there certainly were concerns for the fate of these two Bibas children and their mother, Shiri. As I was driving from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv this morning, there was a big banner unfurled over a high-rise on our way into the city with a picture of the youngest of the two sons, Fear, who was 8 months old when he was abducted on October 7th, 2023. And those images of the mother and her two sons have become kind of a symbol for the hostage crisis in this country. They are very recognizable. They're recognizable faces with their red hair. And of course, this is a very sad occasion, the confirmation, essentially, of the worst fears of the Bibas family and many others. That these children did not make it out alive of the Gaza Strip. And as you mentioned, their bodies, along with the body of one other hostage, will be handed over on Thursday and Saturday. 6 living hostages, 4 taken on October 7th, and 2 others who've been in captivity for about a decade now will be handed to authorities in Israel on Saturday.
And Hala, that Saturday hostage handover will finish the release of all living hostages who were part of the first phase of the ceasefire deal. But what do we know about phase 2 negotiations?
So phase 2 negotiations will go ahead, according to the Prime Minister's office. Israeli media are reporting that it will be a close political ally of Benjamin Netanyahu, Ron Dermer, who will take over the negotiations. And the foreign minister of this country said that phase 2 will go ahead, but on the condition that Gaza be entirely demilitarized. Now, you can imagine that this is a demand that will not be met positively by Hamas and therefore could constitute a major obstacle in future talks.
And Hala, peace remains fragile but steady in Gaza, but Israel's facing growing tensions on another front in Lebanon. Tell us the latest there.
Right. So yesterday was the already delayed deadline for Israeli forces to pull out of southern Lebanon after, according to the requirements of a peace deal that was signed last November. They are, though, keeping outposts on the Lebanese side of the border, 5 of them to be exact. This is angering Lebanese authorities. They're saying this is a violation of the ceasefire term. The Israelis are saying that this is necessary for them to maintain a buffer zone in order for them to protect their northern communities. Yet again, another issue there between the two sides. We'll see if that agreement holds. So far it has, but again, it's, as the other agreement, on thin ice. Back to you.
Paula, thank you so much.
Well, this morning there are new concerns over the health of Pope Francis, who remains hospitalized in Rome.
The Vatican now says the pontiff is battling pneumonia in both lungs, once again calling his clinical condition complex. The Pope is 88 years old. He has been in the hospital for several days now after first coming down with bronchitis earlier this month.
NBC News International correspondent Molly Hunter joining us with the very latest. Molly, good morning. So what are the details that we're hearing about his condition and treatment today?
Guys, good morning. So we did just get a very small update from the Vatican. It said the Pope sat himself up in his armchair this morning, so that's good news. Earlier today, we heard that he woke up and ate breakfast, and that may not sound like a significant update, but the doctors that we have spoken with, NBC medical contributors, guys, say that actually the fact that he's eating breakfast is something to pay attention to. It means that it's unlikely that he has major surgery where he would have to fast, and it also means it's unlikely that he's on a respirator. So we're definitely paying attention to that. The biggest, newsiest update that we got with the most details about his current situation, as you mentioned, the double pneumonia that was diagnosed yesterday, said laboratory tests, chest x-ray, and the Holy Father's clinical condition continue to present a complex picture. Nevertheless, Pope Francis is in a good mood. That's from the Vatican. So yesterday he had a chest scan. Last night that we learned that it was double pneumonia. Not good news from a man that's missing part of one of his lungs and has battled kind of severe chest infections over the last few years, guys.
Yeah, Molly, you mentioned that. I mean, he had part of his right lung removed as a young man. This also isn't the first time he's been diagnosed with bronchitis. So given how his condition has so quickly evolved into double pneumonia. Is there a feeling from the Vatican this is much more serious?
It does feel like it is certainly more serious. I can run you through a little bit, and you can see on screen right there. He has had some major surgeries in the last few years. He's been diagnosed with bronchitis several times just in the last 2 or 3 years. He's battled and recovered from a very severe bout of pneumonia a few years ago as well. But guys, he also, look, we often see him in a wheelchair with a cane, with a walker. He has mobility issues. He has lingering knee and back pain. So this is a man with a lot of health challenges and complications. That, combined with his age at 88 years old, really complicates treatment for something like double pneumonia, according to our medical contributors.
Molly, we've mentioned he's 88 years old, but also, you know, it's a busy time, no matter your age, coming up for the Catholic Church with the holy season of Lent starting soon. Is there any sense from the Vatican about what his schedule will be like? I mean, I know in the short term he's still hospitalized, but any plans that even if and when he were to get out that maybe he slows down?
Slowing down has been a topic of conversation around this Pope for the last couple of years. He has a relentless schedule. And even Friday, you guys, when he was hospitalized and diagnosed with bronchitis for the first time this round, he went to his meetings in the morning before. And then finally, apparently, aides were like, look, we've got to get you to the Gemelli Hospital. So then he was admitted to the hospital only after a morning of work. So he has a relentless schedule. He's still keeping up with readings, with other tasks, according to the Vatican. As far as when we might see him next, they have said that he will stay in the hospital for the appropriate time. We're reading that at least through this weekend. He's canceled public-facing events through this weekend, and we'll certainly keep you posted if we get any hint that we might see him even on the balcony of Rome's Gemelli Hospital, which he sometimes does to wave to the crowds and the people holding vigil there. Guys?
All right, Molly, thank you so much. Coming up, new concerns over wildfire preparedness.
How the Trump administration's hiring freeze is throwing hundreds of seasonal firefighters into limbo at a critical training time. That's when we come back.
We are back with a look at how President Trump's broad hiring freeze is having a ripple effect across federal agencies. One area of particular concern is how critical roles across federal firefighting agencies are going to be filled. And after what we saw in Southern California last month, some are warning it could have deadly consequences for next fire season. NBC News national correspondent Jacob Soboroff explains.
The danger of wildfire couldn't have been any lower when we visited the Columbia River Gorge in the middle of a winter storm last week. But that's exactly why U.S. Forest Service firefighting Captain Ben McLean wanted to bring us to Southwest Washington, where he fought the Tunnel 5 fire in the summer of 2023.
This isn't national forest, though, is it?
No, it's not.
Why do you guys show up and respond here?
Well, we're a part of our nation's promise to the public to respond to wildfire emergencies.
That promise might be getting harder to keep, as President Trump's hiring freeze has thousands of federal seasonal firefighters in limbo at a time when onboarding for the next fire season should have already started.
So by the time you made it here, this house was already up in flames.
It was in the process of burning down. I have firefighters who I should be bringing on, and I'm not able to.
You can't hire people even if you want to right now?
No, I can't.
Why are you thinking about hiring firefighters right now? Look at this.
Yeah, this is the time of year where we're training, we're preparing, we're getting the qualifications that we need to answer the call to service when the summer does come.
The U.S. Forest Service, the Bureau of Land Management, and the National Park Service employ more than 15,000 career and temporary firefighters. The crew from the Forest Service was credited with saving this neighborhood during the Eaton fire in Los Angeles County. It was a federal crew, like the one McLean's a part of, where any delay in the lengthy onboarding process can affect the readiness of the team.
Is there a message that you want, whether it's President Trump or other people in this administration, to hear and to understand about what you see as the urgency of this moment?
I'd like them to ask the firefighters what they think, because we don't have any skin in this game other than public service.
Over a dozen U.S. senators have called for firefighters to be exempted. Pausing the hiring and onboarding of federal seasonal firefighters is simply irresponsible and dangerous.
Our nation's wildfire response system transcends politics because wildfire transcends politics. And it's the right thing to do, to bring on firefighters and ensure that the public is getting the service that they deserve and that they pay for.
Even as the snow falls and alarms sounding about fires to come. Jacob Soboroff, NBC News, Skamania County, Washington.
Time now for our weekly medical checkup. First up, we're going to dive into how the way we live, things like our habits, our environment, our daily choices, can impact how we age. speech.
Plus, we're going to explore how certain types of music can boost concentration and help you focus better.
NBC News medical fellow Dr. Akshay Syal joins us to discuss these health headlines. Dr. Syal, good to have you with us. Let's start with a study published in the journal Nature Medicine. Found lifestyle and environmental factors may have a greater impact on healthy aging than genetics. So what should we take away from this?
Hey, Joe, good morning. It's some news you can use, right? We always wonder, as we're growing older, as our bodies are changing at a cellular level, how much of that is related to genetics and how much of that is related to lifestyle, right? How much of the, things that we do in our day-to-day life affecting that? And this study, fairly large study out of the UK looking at some biomarkers in our blood, and you can see some findings on your screen there. They essentially found that, lifestyle things like smoking, poor socioeconomic status and, lower amounts of physical activity, those are really the three things here linked to faster aging. So guys, it's the things that we talk about all the time on this show, making sure you're getting 150 minutes of exercise a week, making sure you're limiting how much you eat on a day-to-day basis. Those sort of things are actually affecting us, our bodies on a cellular level here. So guys, some doctor's orders here. Take control, right? Take control of your own health, making sure you are practicing those measures of a healthy lifestyle and do what you can. And I think this one's really important, guys. You don't need to make, all these changes at once. You can slowly start to add them and just know that it is changing your body at a cellular level, guys.
Dr. Sal, next let's look at a new study it published that found that some music can help with focus and concentration. I've definitely tried this before after reading some of these articles. What types of music had the most impact?
Savannah, I love this study. In medical school, we're always pulling up these playlists on Apple Music and Spotify, deep focus and workflow you can see on your screen there. And, these researchers wanted to see, is that stuff actually doing anything for us? And it turns out it is. In this case specifically, they used an app called Spiritune. They found that there was a playlist called Work Focus. It's important, Savannah, these don't have any lyrics. These kind of music, they're sort of, sound-based and don't have any words. And they compared it to, the top 100 in 2021. Artists like Adele and Justin Bieber and Kid Laroi, and they were sort of seeing, does that music versus the focus music, which one actually helps boost your concentration? And, unsurprisingly, they found that the music without the lyrics, those playlists are actually helping. So, guys, some doctor's orders, try it out if you can. There's an app called Spiritune. The playlist is called Work Focus. And just be aware it may not work for you.
My car ride in this morning, the driver was playing Kenny G, which I don't think helped at all.
So funny. My car rides in the morning, such a range. Sometimes it's like, whoa, this is aggressive, and sometimes puts me back to sleep.
Slow sack. Sorry, finally, I know I dream, but I can remember maybe 10% of them at best. But a new study out of Italy, it explored what influences our ability to actually remember our dreams. And Dr. Syal, tell us what researchers discovered about what makes some people more likely to recall the dreams.
Joe, just another reason to have a positive, upbeat attitude throughout the day. I'm like you. I don't tend to remember a lot of my dreams. And in my friend group, we have people who, some people remember things, some people just wake up and they don't. And researchers wanted to see why, if there was anything, in our sort of lifestyle that can make us more likely to remember dreams. So a couple things, guys. Make sure you have a positive attitude towards dreams and just the sort of feeling of dreaming in general. Make sure you approach it with a positive attitude and make sure you're, practicing good sleep hygiene. Sleeping at the same time every day, not using your phone late at night. Those things can actually improve, remembering those dreams. And fortunately, or hopefully, they are good dreams and not nightmares. But it's something to keep in mind, guys.
Very true. Mine's usually that I miss my midterm. That's all I remember.
I
keep missing that midterm.
Late to work a lot for this, and it's like, I don't know.
It means something. I don't know. Dr. Syal, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Coming up, get ready for Man Camp.
We're going to take a look at the intense boot camp that's pushing thousands of men to their limits and promising more than just a physical change. More on that when we come back.
We are back now with more on a cell phone ban in effect for the second largest school district in the country. Los Angeles Unified has been working for months to get schools, teachers, and families ready for the change. Reporter Brittany Hope from our affiliate, NBC Los Angeles, talked to parents and students about how they're feeling about the ban.
It's taking that lifeline away for them to be able to contact us at home. I don't agree with it at all.
The deadline for Los Angeles Unified Schools to implement their cell phone ban policy.
I'm going to see a lot of people complaining, but it's not really that big of a deal.
to me.
Some campuses, like Van Nuys Middle School, have already had rules in place since the start of the academic year. 8th grader Angel Lopez showed us the magnetic pouch he and his friends were given that they have to put their phone inside when they make their way through the front gates in the morning.
This part is what, like, what's it called? It has the needle. And this part is like what locks it, so that when you close it, it locks. And at the end of the day, they have like this like type of magnet where you put it on like the tip right here, and then it what's it called? It takes out the needle and then it opens it.
Although the district says there will be exceptions made and all students will be able to get their phones during emergencies, some middle schoolers tell us they still feel nervous.
I feel against the pouches, like the incident of the fires in LA. We had to call our parents, and they told us not to put our phones in the pouches. See, if the fire started here, if it was closer, and we had to call our parents, there's only one thing to unlock your phones. That's all the way in the back of the school.
Superintendent Alberto Carvalho says there will be exceptions for some, like those who are learning English or need their phone for medical reasons. He hopes everyone understands the bigger goal of this policy.
The educational environment will improve. Less cyberbullying, increased levels of social happiness and joy, students being able to look each other in the eye of their colleagues and socially interacting with their peers. And I know that this is a new policy. Not everybody agrees with it, but the evidence in terms of negative impact on the lives of children is well documented.
Our thanks to Brittany Hope for that report. The ban includes all smart devices. That means watches, earbuds, even smart glasses.
All right, let's get to some financial headlines. Chase Bank is making Zelle transactions a little more difficult.
CNBC's Savannah Henao has that and some other money news. Savannah, good morning.
Hey, Joe. Hey, Savannah. Good morning to you. Yeah, it definitely will be more difficult because Chase will start declining or blocking payments from Zelle for transactions that stem from social media or messaging apps. Now, the updated policy goes into effect March 23rd, and the bank says the move is designed to help prevent fraud and scams. The change follows a lawsuit filed by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau accusing Zelle and the banks that own it, which is Chase, Wells Fargo, and Bank of America, of failing to protect consumers. Nike is teaming up with Skims. That's the shapewear brand owned by Kim Kardashian on a new women's activewear line this spring. The partnership could give Nike a leg up in women-focused athleisure brands as it tries to turn the business around with a return to its core sports roots. Nike currently relies on men-focused products for more than half its sales. The new brand, called Nike Skims, will include training apparel, footwear, and accessories. And Kendrick Lamar is riding the wave from his Super Bowl halftime show. He's become the first rap artist to hit 100 million monthly listeners on Spotify and the 9th musician overall to hit that number. Kendrick's latest album, GNX, also returning to the top of the Billboard charts following the Super Bowl. Also, 2 of his other releases, Damn and Good Kid, MADD City, are back in the top 10, making him the first rapper to have 3 albums in the top 10 at the same time.
Wow. All right, There you go.
Good for him.
Savannah, thank you so much.
Good for him. Yeah.
Well, would you spend $18,000 on a 3-day military-style boot camp that promises to change your life? Well, across the country, dozens of men are doing just that and pushing themselves to the limit, believing it will make them better husbands, fathers, and leaders. But some mental health experts have some warnings. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock takes a closer look at one of these programs.
You're way too goddamn big to not be throwing this little piece around.
Through a high-intensity boot camp offered once or twice a year.
You, right? Yes. Are you last?
That includes hand-to-hand combat, water hosing, and crawling across railroad tracks. The Modern Day Night Project makes a promise to men who shell out the $18,000 to attend the 3-day program. You'll become better friends, better fathers, better leaders.
They're stuck in a rut. They've lost that fire. They've lost the edge as a man. Suffering leads to those superpowers.
Instructor Steve Eckert says the suffering is just one snapshot of a program that strives for a deeper purpose.
It starts off very loud, chaotic, and violent. They're forced to fight each other. After that, they're hugging each other. They're crying.
The common thread for many attendees, he says, is a past colored by abuse and the search for some direction.
Keep going, keep going.
Since its 2019 start, the project has held 20 sessions and racked up millions of views online and plenty of questions about its purpose. In June of 2020, a participant died during a session, and his family sued for wrongful death, alleging a failure to provide necessary medical care, though the parties settled a few years later. In a follow-up interview, Eckert told NBC News he did not want to discuss the matter due to privacy and respect of an extremely unfortunate tragedy, but added there was no liability. What is the Modern Day Knights program teaching men about masculinity?
To be a civilized, savage servant. So civilized, they're going to open doors, they're going to say please and thank you. They're going to be a savage when it's needed, when it's time to be a protector.
If you're not a savage in that sense, does that mean you're not a real man?
I think a man should have it in to be a savage.
Masculinity never even crossed my mind.
Entrepreneur Michael Chernow took part in 2022 as a physical challenge.
I believe that I have this sort of inherent warrior mindset, and I run towards the hard things in life. When I'm in the hard thing, I tend to feel like I am at my most sort of vulnerable place where I can start to really dig.
Chernow has been married for almost 2 decades, has 2 kids, and is a highly successful businessman. It's not that you felt broken, but you did want to address this trauma from earlier in your life.
I had a very, very violent and abusive relationship with my father, and that motivated me to look elsewhere for a father figure.
He says that in turn led to a sexually abusive relationship with a mentor. How did going through this program help you to address some of those years-long traumas?
It brought to light some of the trust issues that I have in my life.
He says he endured activities like this, digging graves in which participants lie in closed body bags for growth as much as grit. A physical breakdown is required as part of the process. Your thoughts on that?
That's been my experience too. And I can't say that for everyone.
Licensed therapist Dr. George James weighed the benefits of programs like MDK and said they're not a replacement for actual treatment.
I've had clients that have done really difficult, challenging things, from ultra marathons to tough Mudder races. I think it's being able to, as a therapist, being able to have the conversation around how does this directly help you to be a better father, partner, man.
For Michael, the actions in this case prove stronger than any words.
Some people have to walk through the fire to know that a burn is not going to kill you.
Sam Brock, NBC News.
Fascinating. I would prefer a spa day. You know, that's mine. But it sparks an interesting conversation, though, about just how we treat our trauma.
People will have a lot of feelings about that one,
All right.
for sure.
Coming up, saving a neighborhood institution.
That's right. A Kentucky community bands together to help clean up a beloved local diner that was underwater. That story's up next.
Welcome back. Country music legend Dolly Parton famously quips it's hard to be a diamond in a rhinestone world. Well, now she's got the numbers to prove it. The Dixie Darling is back in the headlines this morning for topping herself on a country chart in the UK, exchanging one hit for another. See, last week her compilation titled Smoky Mountain DNA, Family, Faith, and Fables was large and in charge, nabbing the #1 spot on that chart. But it has since been dethroned, making room for the very best of yet another Dolly compilation record. And in the immortal words of her other chart topper, 9 to 5, there's a chance Miss Dolly might be sipping on several cups of ambition, spending nearly 70 weeks at #1. Plus, right now, she's got that hit with Sabrina Carpenter. The remake of Please Please.
Which is so good.
As always, everywhere.
As is the music video. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. All right, thanks, Joe. Well, finally, this hour, in the midst of so much devastation in Kentucky, residents in one town are putting their own cleanup efforts on hold to help a beloved member of their community. NBC News correspondent Kathy Park has the story.
The recent floods of Kentucky may have upended lives, but hope is already simmering at a beloved eatery in Hazard, badly damaged in the disaster.
It's just an Eastern Kentucky thing. If somebody's in trouble, we help.
Once word got out that Francis Diner was underwater,
it's awful.
Help moved in.
They always support us, so we're here to support them.
At 84, Frances Napier, the matriarch of this local fixture, has been serving up tasty Southern meals for more than 5 decades. Why do you think it's so special?
I guess home cooking. You know, old country cooking. How are you, John?
I'm good, honey. How are you?
Good.
But it's also the side of warmth and generosity that keep diners coming back.
Always put her love into her food.
It's like your grandma. She'll fix anything you want.
We're going to get cleaned up.
Now, the community that she's fed and nurtured for years is returning the favor, restoring her namesake restaurant.
What do you want to tell the people helping you right now?
I appreciate it so much.
And as she rebuilds, she knows her late husband will be close by.
What would he say if he was still here today?
He'd be heartbroken. And he'd tell me everything would be all right.
Kathy Park, NBC News.
Are you ready to get back into the kitchen?
Yes, I am.
Hazard, Kentucky.
We call that the Saints of Hazard right there. That is so sweet.
You know that's the kind of story that gets.
Love it. That is going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Stay with us, though. The news continues right now. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Thanks very much for joining us. I'm Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, another winter wallop from Mother Nature. It's bringing heavy snow and some bitterly cold temps to millions. Folks from Colorado to the Carolinas waking up to dangerous conditions out on the roads. We are not out of the woods yet. Our Angie Lassman has your full forecast in just a moment. Plus, new questions surrounding that terrifying Delta crash in Toronto that left a plane completely upside down on the runway. What experts say could have ultimately sent the jet tumbling upon landing. In Washington, the widening fallout from President Trump's and Elon Musk's massive federal overhaul. Some government agencies now scrambling to rehire previously cut staffers that they still need. Comes as a slew of state-led legal challenges to the plan are shut down by a judge, at least for now. We're covering it all. And could AI actually replace your therapist? Later in the hour, we're digging into some eye-opening new research. Could apps like ChatGPT shake up the future of mental health treatments? We'll chat with our non-AI experts coming up a little later in the hour. Guessing she might have some opinions on that one.
I think so.
Let's begin with the latest storm sweeping across the country. It's the latest in a string of brutal winter weather that's impacting tens of millions of Americans. A mix of rain, snow, and ice could threaten power grids and pose dangerous driving conditions across parts of the east today. Virginia predicted to see the heaviest snowfall with more than 10 inches possible in some areas.
Wow. Forecasters warn that the Arctic air could plunge temperatures as low as 50 degrees below average. It's a big concern in states like Kentucky and Tennessee, where first responders are still conducting water rescues from this weekend's deadly flooding. NBC News correspondent Kathy Park is in Knoxville, Tennessee with the latest for us. Kathy, good morning.
Hey guys, good morning. As you can see, the snow is starting to fall here in downtown Knoxville. Right now, the temperature is right around the freezing mark, so all the snow that is falling, it is sticking and actually accumulating. And while it is pretty to look at, it's actually pretty dangerous. We're getting reports of dozens of crashes across the state. And it's not just the snow, but the bitter cold temperatures. Millions are waking up to the coldest air we've experienced in this season.
Overnight, another winter wallop barreling across the country.
It's a whiteout. You can't see anything.
Over 100 million people in the path of heavy snow and brutally cold Arctic air.
It's insane how much has fallen just already.
The wicked weather coupled with those record low temperatures creating treacherous conditions from Colorado to the Carolinas. In Minnesota, firefighters battling the elements as well as the flames. Some of their equipment freezing in frigid temps that felt like 40 below. The house they saved now encased in ice. Blustery weather also causing near zero visibility on some highways, with some tractor trailers running off busy roads and several multi-vehicle pileups.
This is a snowstorm in the middle of a natural disaster.
Some hard-hit communities in the south, still cleaning up from this week's deadly flooding, are now bracing for another winter punch. Eastern Kentucky reeling from widespread flood damage. Raging waters destroying homes and businesses. The death toll rising to 14.
To see the devastation and everything that we've worked hard for and built up to be totally destroyed, words just can't explain.
Heroic water rescue still happening around the clock.
I hear you. We're coming.
And with more extreme weather moving in, now the race is on to prepare for Mother Nature's next bitter blow.
Once the wind hits, though, I'm like, this is Antarctica. This is the equivalent of Antarctica.
And of course, the other big headline that we are tracking today are those bitter cold temperatures. It's important to note that when wind chills fall below zero, frostbite can set in a matter of minutes. Yesterday, the coldest recorded temperature, Antelope Creek, North Dakota, fell minus 45 degrees. And yes, it did feel like Antarctica over there yesterday. Oof. Guys, back to you.
All right, Kathy, thank you.
More now on those chilly trouble spots with meteorologist Angie Lassman.
Hey, Angie, good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning to you. No surprise that we've got essentially cold weather alerts in place from top to bottom when it comes to the middle of the country, including Texas, parts of the South. We've got really just chilly air, the coldest air of the season and the coldest air in many years that has spilled across much of the country. Here's what we're dealing with right now. Minus 10 for Minneapolis. You add in those winds. We've got minus 29. Similar story for Valentine. We've got Bismarck feeling like minus 43. It is brutal for folks in that region. Even Chicago, single digit temperatures for actual values and then minus 9 for what it feels like. As far south as Abilene, it's just 10 degrees, but feeling like below zero as well. Minus 18 for what it feels like in Amarillo at this time. Now, as we get into the afternoon hours, you can see kind of the setup that our country is in. We've got all this cold air still settling in, and that means that even by this afternoon, our warmest part of the day, we're still really only into the single digits in places like Topeka. Chicago, you'll top out at 17 degrees. Places like Alexandria into the 40s. We've got Lubbock headed to the high 20s. So not a whole lot of warm air in place, really east of the Rockies. And that goes for tomorrow, too. Temperatures in Atlanta get to the 30s, but only really the mid-30s. We're still running about 20 degrees below normal for this time of year. Dallas, 33 degrees. We've got the teens for Kansas City and even New York City. You're just going to get 29 degrees for your high tomorrow. As we get into the weekend, we'll start to see some indications of some moderating temperatures, but we're still going to be quite chilly considering the time of year. So Chicago, this looks like an improvement for you. You actually end up into the high 30s by the time the weekend wraps up. We'll get back to those mid 60s for our friends in Dallas. And we see even parts of the plains go from the teens to the 40s as we head through the weekend. Those winter alerts, though, we've actually seen these just update. So this is an improvement. We're going to see many of these kind of last through at least the rest of the day today, but then we'll start to see some big improvements across this region by tomorrow. But in the meantime, heavy rain for the Gulf Coast, and we've got some snow working across the Appalachians and parts of the Mid-Atlantic. That's going to be the story for today. Difficult road conditions. We'll see the heavy snow leaving us with some delays potentially on the roads and in the air. And then we get some of this kind of still lake effect snow going on with those cold winds across that region for tomorrow. Between now and then, though, specifically tonight, we'll see a really good amount of snow for places like Virginia Beach, 6 to 10 inches. Richmond, you'll get potentially anywhere from 3 to 6 inches. So we've got some difficulty on the roadways for places like I-95 and I-40 with some icing, too, from some of that freezing rain. Now, big picture look for your Friday. As we look ahead to the weekend, it looks a lot nicer, a lot quieter, plenty of sunshine. But notice the record chill still sticks with us. That cold is going to continue well into our weekend for some spots before we start to see some moderation. And then rain returns for our friends in the Pacific Northwest. We'll eventually see a bit of a warm up on the way east of the Rockies. It'll be a sunny weekend. So that's the positive spin that I'm giving you guys. But, you know, it's not tropical weather by any means, which I don't know about you, but that's what I'm looking for right about now.
No kidding.
The sunglasses, they'll block some of the wind.
Yeah, my hood, my beanie, the sunglasses.
Just talking about vacation.
Yeah, where are we going?
I know. All right. Thanks, Angie.
You got it.
Well, the investigation continues this morning into the crash landing of a Delta Airlines flight in Toronto.
All 80 people on board Delta Flight 4819 survived the crash. The plane flipped over immediately after touching down on Monday afternoon, then burst into flames. The plane ended up upside down on the tarmac, leaving everyone dangling from their seatbelts. There are many unanswered questions as to what happened during those final moments during the landing. During a briefing yesterday, airport officials praised the flight crew.
Every time you board a flight, you are greeted by flight attendants and by flight crew often. It's their job to make us comfortable and confident about the flight ahead. The crew of Delta Flight 4819 heroically led passengers to safety, evacuating a jet that had overturned on the runway on landing that was amidst smoke and fire.
NBC News correspondent Stephanie Gosk joins us now from Toronto with the latest on this. Steph, good morning. All right, do we know anything new about the moments before the crash or how this happened?
Well, Savannah, we have a better idea of what investigators are going to be looking at, in part because of that remarkable video that was taken from a cockpit of a plane where you see that up-close view of Delta 4819 coming in for a hard landing, and then the wing entirely breaking off, and the landing gear, according to experts who reviewed it. What they tell us is that investigators are going to be looking very specifically at why that wing was ripped off. That is what caused the plane to tumble, and that is what left people hanging upside down in their seats. Among the issues they'll be looking at is whether weather may have affected that hard landing. There were wind gusts, according to some reports, of up to 40 miles an hour, and whether or not that could have affected it. Now, at the press conference yesterday, airport officials were asked about the weather, asked about these issues, and were reluctant to give specific answers. But here's what the CEO of the airport had to say.
This would not be a time for us to have theory or to speculate on what caused the crash. So as I shared, we have a number of agencies that are here that are responsible for doing a thorough and full and complete investigation to determine all the causal factors, and we are looking forward to getting those results.
So this investigation is being led by the Canadians, the National Transportation Safety Board here in Canada, with some assistance from the FAA as well as the NTSB. Now, the wreckage is still on the tarmac, and it's going to be there probably for another day or so. Investigators want to look at it there. They also want to look at the runway, and they have told us that they've removed those very important black boxes. They've sent them to a lab, and hopefully we get some idea from those in the days ahead.
Steph, many people were able to walk off the plane with the help of the flight crew, as we've seen on some of those compelling social media videos. But what do we know about this point about the passengers who were injured during this landing?
Well, we've spoken to a number of them, Joe, and some of them really are still in shock, and you can imagine why. One of the guys that I spoke with said that there was enough time as that crash was taking place that he said to himself, you know what? I'm probably going to die. This is a plane crash, and you die in plane crashes. Instead, they all found themselves upside down, hanging in those seats, having to escape a plane that was still burning. Now, Delta Airlines tells us 21 people were injured, but 19 of those people have been released. And when you look at that footage, when you look at those flames engulfing that plane, you realize just how remarkable it was that everyone survived this. Another interesting thing about that, too, when it comes to the investigation, is that very often investigators do not have the pilots to interview about what happened. In this case, they will, guys.
All right, Stephanie, thank you so much for your reporting. Get warm.
Now to that joint interview with President Trump and Elon Musk. They were asked about their efforts to dramatically reshape the federal government after laying off thousands of workers in the administration's first month. NBC News senior White House correspondent Garrett Hake joins us now with the latest. Garrett, good morning.
Hey, Joe, good morning. And yeah, President Trump and Elon Musk used that new interview, which aired overnight, to heap praise on each other and lay out this vision for overhauling the federal government, a vision that involves deepening cuts across the federal workforce and the president consolidating his own power over nearly every aspect of the federal government, as he's also attempting to do with a new executive order.
President Trump and Elon Musk again sharing the spotlight.
He's a brilliant guy. He's a great guy.
In an interview airing overnight, taped Friday, the two defending their efforts to radically remake the federal government.
The president is the elected representative of the people, so he's representing the will of the people. And if the bureaucracy is fighting the will of the people and preventing the president from implementing what the people want, then what we live in is a bureaucracy and not a democracy.
Many of those efforts allowed to move forward for now, after a federal judge weighed in on a lawsuit filed by 14 states asking to temporarily block the firing of federal workers and to stop Musk's team from accessing data systems. The judge adding the states did legitimately call into question what appears to be the, quote, unchecked authority of an unelected individual. It comes as Trump is out with a new executive order establishing that several independent regulatory agencies now answer to the president. The order also saying executive branch employees can't contradict the president or attorney general when interpreting the law. Now the federal government facing widespread disruption with a recent firing spree. The Department of Agriculture now scrambling to hire back several critical employees fired over the weekend who've been responding to the bird flu epidemic. Also fired over the weekend, hundreds of senior staff at the Department of Homeland Security and more than 1,000 at the National Institutes of Health. Some 400 probationary employees at the FAA also let go. And while the agency says staffers who handled critical safety functions were retained, former National Aerospace Defense Program worker Charles Spitzer-Statlander, fired Saturday, told us he worries safety will ultimately be impacted.
There's a lack of seriousness that is being given to what they're actually doing. And this is deadly serious.
And the latest senior official to leave their job in protest of the administration's cuts is Jim Jones. He's the head of the food division of the FDA. He called the firings at his agency indiscriminate and told Stat News that he, quote, didn't want to spend the next 6 months on activities that are fundamentally about dismantling an organization. Asked about that, the White House press secretary said in part, President Trump is only interested in the best and most qualified people who are also willing to implement his America First agenda. Joe?
All right, Garrett, thank you.
We've got much more to come on this hour of Morning News Now, including the latest from the Vatican as Pope Francis battles a serious case of double pneumonia. More on the pontiff's condition this morning. That's in just a moment.
First, after the break, President Trump on the offensive, blaming Ukraine for its years-long war with Russia, as Kyiv is left in the dark on peace talks. Our Richard Engel is covering it all next.
Welcome back. President Trump is suggesting that Ukraine is responsible for the war with Russia and should have made a deal to end it. His comments come after U.S. and Russian officials held initial high-level talks in Saudi Arabia aimed at ending the war, though Kyiv was not involved. NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel has the latest.
Out here in eastern Ukraine, the pace of the fighting is relentless, with Russian drone and missile attacks coming almost constantly, especially on clear days like today. And now Ukrainian soldiers out here are watching incredulously as President Trump blames them for starting the war with Russia, even though it was Russia that invaded 3 years ago. Promising to end the biggest war in Europe since World War II, President Trump is now blaming Ukraine for being invaded by Russia 3 years ago, saying Ukrainian President Zelensky should have made unspecified concessions to placate Russia and avoid the war.
You should have never started it. You could have made a deal. I could have made a deal for Ukraine that would have given them almost all of the land, everything, almost all of the land, and no people would have been killed.
President Trump has launched a peace process, sending his top foreign policy team to Saudi Arabia to meet the Russian side. They met for more than 4 hours, leaving the Russians smiling. Ukraine was not invited. President Zelensky expressing frustration at being sidelined from the negotiations. This morning saying President Trump is trapped in a disinformation bubble, suggesting he's following Russian propaganda. Russia occupies about 20% of Ukraine. Ukrainians fear President Trump will surrender the territory to Putin. On the front lines in eastern Ukraine this morning, Ukrainian troops are trying to both defend their country from ongoing Russian missile and drone attacks and figure out if the United States is still with them. Ivan, who by army rules only gave his first name, is the commander of a tank unit outside Kharkiv. Does it feel like decisions are being made about Ukraine without Ukraine's input? Yes, this is exactly the feeling we have, he said, adding, it does influence the mood. It is very demotivating. President Trump's Ukraine envoy, retired General Keith Kellogg, arrived in Ukraine today, and Ukrainian officials hope to take him out to places like this on the front line so that he can learn more, quote, truth about the conflict here.
All right, Richard, thank you.
An update this morning on Pope Francis. The Vatican now says he's battling pneumonia in both lungs. It is just the latest health hurdle for the pontiff, whose condition has worsened since he was first hospitalized last week with bronchitis. NBC News international correspondent Molly Hunter joins us now with the latest. Molly, good morning.
Joe, good morning to you. And we actually have another small update. Since that statement, we learned from the Vatican this morning that the Pope sat himself up in an armchair this morning. That's some good news for the 88-year-old as he continues treatment for double pneumonia.
This morning, the Pope's lung condition is getting more serious and continues to present what the Vatican calls a complex picture. The Vatican saying a chest scan showed the onset of bilateral pneumonia, also known as double pneumonia, an infection in both lungs. And this morning, adding, the 88-year-old pontiff woke up and had breakfast. A key sign, doctors say, that he's not on a respirator and he's holding down food.
The good news that we can take from the Vatican's report is that he's still communicating with people, and he's able to eat, he's able to talk, and so that indicates that the severity of the pneumonia is not that bad at the moment.
In recent days, the faithful, as they do, have flocked here, holding vigil outside Rome's Gemelli Hospital, offering prayers from all corners of the globe.
We lit a candle for him yesterday in church before we travelled to Rome.
A rainbow even appearing over the Pope's hospital, perhaps a good omen. And well wishes from some of his youngest followers, too. Francis's age and previous health challenges all make a pneumonia diagnosis even more serious. As a young man, part of his lung was removed, and he suffered chronic lung conditions as he aged, fighting bronchitis multiple times in recent years. And he recovered from a bad case of pneumonia a few years ago. But even still, the pontiff's schedule has been relentless, only checking into the hospital last week after a morning of meetings. And now, the Vatican has canceled most of his public-facing appearances through the weekend.
Now, Joe, the Vatican also says that despite his worsening condition, his heart is doing well, as in he's in good spirits this morning. He will remain in the hospital for as long as necessary. Joe, Savannah?
Molly, thank you so much. Coming up, could your next therapy session be fueled by AI?
After the break, we'll dig into some stunning new research showing ChatGPT can actually rival advice from professionals. So what does it all mean for the future of mental health treatments? Our doctor's in up next.
We're back with an alarming break-in at the Los Angeles home of Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban. This burglary is the latest in a string of high-profile heists against celebrities and pro athletes. It comes as new charges are brought against 7 men in a series of incidents that targeted some of the NFL's biggest stars. NBC News correspondent Liz Kreutz has the latest from L.A. Liz, good morning.
Hey, Joe, good morning. Yeah, this latest incident targeting the home of Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban happened on Valentine's Day night. According to law enforcement sources, the couple was not home at the time. It comes as federal prosecutors have announced charges against a group of men from South America who they say are behind several of those recent burglaries, including the ones targeting NFL stars Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce.
This morning, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban, the latest victims of a string of thefts nationwide targeting the homes of high-profile celebrities and athletes. 2 law enforcement sources tell NBC News the couple's Los Angeles mansion was broken into on Valentine's Day night when at least one burglar smashed through glass to gain entry. An employee at the property called police, prompting the burglar to flee. It's unclear what, if anything, was taken. According to the sources, neither Kidman nor Urban were home at the time. Urban has been performing at his residency in Las Vegas.
It's utopia. You would want to be in here.
Posting a photo of the two on Valentine's Day. While it's not clear who was behind the break-in at the home of one of Hollywood's most famous couples, officials have been raising the alarm about robberies targeting celebrities and high-end houses after an alarming string of heists against pro athletes in the NBA and NFL. Overnight, federal prosecutors in Florida announcing charges against 7 men from Chile, who they say targeted the homes of several athletes, including Kansas City Chiefs stars Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes last year.
It's frustrating. It's disappointing. I can't get into too many of the details.
According to a criminal complaint, the men are members of a South American theft group that stole more than $2 million worth of valuable items. This photo shared in the complaint shows some of the suspects posing with a safe and jewelry stolen from Milwaukee Bucks forward Bobby Portis. Following the robbery last year, Portis shared this surveillance video appearing to show 2 masked men breaking in.
While I was at my game yesterday, I had a home invasion, and they took most of my prized possessions.
This incident and others prompting the FBI to issue a formal warning to sports leagues about organized theft targeting their athletes.
Now, as for the break-in at Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban's home, police have not yet named a suspect or said if they believe a similar transnational group might be behind it. The burglary did happen around the same time, though, that Beverly Hills police arrested 3 people who they say are allegedly connected to burglaries carried out by South American crews. It's unclear if that incident was connected. There have been a string of recent break-ins in wealthier parts of L.A. in recent weeks. Now, as for the couple, neither have publicly commented on what happened. Joe?
All right, Liz, thank you.
Well, now to a shocking story out of Savannah, Georgia, where a woman is suing an IVF clinic over a mix-up with embryos. The woman unknowingly carried an embryo of another couple and gave birth to the child that was not biologically hers. NBC News correspondent Priya Sridhar has the details. Priya, good morning.
Good morning, Savannah. This was truly a nightmare scenario. Christina Murray endured the physical and emotional toll of going through IVF, carrying a baby for 9 months, only to discover that the baby was not genetically hers. She ended up giving the boy back to his biological parents, and now she's suing her fertility clinic. Christina Murray was finally living her lifelong dream of being a mother.
He was beautiful and perfect, but it was also very clear that something was wrong.
After a grueling round of IVF and 9 months of pregnancy, Murray, a white woman using a white sperm donor, gave birth in late 2023 to a baby boy with a much darker complexion.
My son's skin tone didn't match mine, but he was still my son.
What should have been a joyful first few months bonding with her son, who she loved and wanted to raise, was punctuated by constant fear and uncertainty.
I didn't know whether it was a sperm mix-up or whether he was someone else's.
Murray took a DNA test that confirmed her baby wasn't hers biologically. The clinic she'd used, Coastal Fertility Specialists, eventually determined that they'd mistakenly implanted another couple's embryo in Murray. The biological parents sued her for custody, and Murray chose to give the baby she loved up to them rather than fight.
And I walked out of the building with an empty stroller, and they left with my son.
And what was it like going home alone?
Probably the hardest thing I've ever done.
Murray now suing the clinic, which said in a statement to NBC News that it deeply regrets the error, calling it an isolated event with no further patients affected. The clinic also saying it's since conducted an in-depth review and put additional safeguards in place. Her story is rare but not unprecedented in the world of fertility treatment, which experts say is largely unregulated.
There's no reliable data or disclosures about how often IVF goes unjustifiably wrong. The U.S. regulates assisted reproduction far more lightly than other developed countries.
Even after the trauma of the last year and the legal process ahead, Christina, who's 38 and single, isn't giving up on her hopes of one day becoming a mother.
I have started the process over again with another clinic, and I'm hopeful that in the next year or two I can try again.
Now, Murray's attorney told me that he has successfully represented over 1,000 fertility patients against clinics across the country over the last 10 years in a variety of misconduct cases, including ones like this involving embryo mix-ups, but also in cases involving freezer malfunctions that have resulted in embryos being destroyed or damaged. Now, as far as Christina's own embryos, I asked her about the status of those, and she said she's not sure if they're still frozen in storage at her old fertility clinic or if perhaps one of them could have been mistakenly transferred to another patient. Savannah.
All right, Priya, thank you very much. Well, for more on this lawsuit, let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Danny Ceballos. Danny, good morning. I mean, really just kind of unbelievable details there. I mean, as Priya outlined, it is an expensive process. It is painful. It is intense. I've frozen embryos. I can't imagine something like this happening. What does the legal road ahead look like for her? How shocking this whole thing seems impact any of this?
Yeah, this is really just the lead claim is for negligence, which all you need to prove is that somebody's conduct fell below the applicable standard of care. It seems as though the clinic is already acknowledging that there was an error. And so from there, it's not a real hard leap for the plaintiffs to prove that they fell below the standard of care and that it caused her damages. Damages might be a little speculative because it's not traditional damages like a shattered femur or something physical. It's mental anguish, which can be a little nebulous. But in this case, anyone on that jury who has kids or is a parent or has tried to become a parent will understand the anguish involved.
Have we seen a case at all like this before?
What's interesting is you see a lot of cases like wrongful life, a pregnancy that should have been terminated, for example, and resulted in just terrible lifelong injuries and pain to a child. You see those cases. I'm not aware of a case like this before. And I think you have much more clear-cut damages in the sense that you have someone who was deceived, carried the baby to term, believed it was hers, and then had it, as she says, ripped away from her. Those are the kind of damages I think anybody can understand. There is nothing that benefited this woman in this case. She didn't get the benefit of anything. She did all the work lost everything.
Also, just to put it in perspective, and this is not necessarily what we know is going on in this case, but I mean, the damages could have been for both women, for both mothers. It could have maybe been the only embryo, for example, that couple had, and they never actually get to carry their own baby. I mean, it's really startling that something like this could even happen. What is the defense, do you think, of the fertility clinic? What would you advise them?
This is a case probably they should think about settling early and often. And I say that because I have no idea what the actual facts are internally. They may discover that they did everything right, but it seems that that's not the case. It appears that they're already acknowledging that there was an error. And then from there, it's almost what we call re ipsa loquitur. It's a Latin term that means the thing speaks for itself. No one else could have been negligent. Certainly the mother was not negligent.
Right.
Certainly the other parents whose child this is, they didn't do anything wrong. The only person who could have done something wrong was the clinic. When you're a plaintiff's attorney, that is a really good doctrine, very helpful to proving your case.
Danny, it also, by the way, comes as President Trump signed an executive order. This is what it says. It has to do with IVF. It says, it's the policy of my administration to ensure reliable access to IVF treatment, including by easing unnecessary statutory or regulatory burdens to make IVF treatment drastically more affordable. Well, could that have any impact here?
Well, first, there are a few different kinds of executive orders. There are ones that are true orders. Thou shalt do this immediately. Other executive orders are kind of a plan to plan. And that seems to be more like this varietal, where it's just an order to investigate all possibilities and then come report back. I don't know that that'll involve any immediate policy change, certainly no immediate legislative change, but it could have an effect ultimately on IVF, the industry, which, you know, to some degree, if this can happen as rare as it is that we've just discussed, these are the kinds of things that probably need to be regulated even more closely.
All right, Danny Ceballos, thank you so much. Well, now it's time for our weekly mental health check-in. This week, we're taking a closer look at a question at the core of mental health awareness. How much is too much? Some experts are starting to conclude over-awareness could actually be making things worse.
Plus, we're going to break down new research suggesting that ChatGPT might actually rival human therapists in some areas.
Joining us now for more on the latest mental health headlines is psychotherapist Dr. Robbie Ludwig. Dr. Ludwig, good morning. Let's start with something interesting from Psychology Today we were just referencing, suggesting that focusing too much on mental health could make people feel worse instead of better. What do you think about that?
This was a really interesting study which looked at the impact raising mental health awareness can have. And obviously, it's a good thing to raise mental health awareness, but how are we raising it? So in some cases, it can get people to worry about themselves unnecessarily, where they're almost self-diagnosing. They may take a normal reaction they're having to an event and pathologize it and make themselves schizophrenic. I'm exaggerating. So it's really interesting to look at how this information is being disseminated to make sure it's accurate and that the nuances are being conveyed.
Let's talk about a new study that looks at the impact of therapy animals. The journal Pets looked at how therapy dogs help first-year college students, and the results pretty compelling and maybe not surprising. These programs are linked to lower stress, less depression, reduced anxiety. I think that's a common thing now in colleges around finals time. You suddenly see these cute little dogs wandering around campuses. Well, why do they have such a powerful effect?
Well, animals have the ability to give us unconditional love and to help us feel understood. And when you are feeling down or worried or stressed, the ability to be able to focus on an animal that's giving us so much back really does help. And this study revealed, I think most importantly, not only did it stabilize some moods and reduce worry, it increased self-compassion, which I think is really important. The study looked at kids, college kids who had animals. I think that's important to note. But what's there not to love about being in the presence of a loving dog?
The dogs are also whispering the answers to the students.
That must be why, yeah.
So much easier.
Yeah, that too.
Before you go, this is what we've been talking a lot about. This recent study, it looked at whether people could tell the difference between written responses when it comes to therapy from expert therapists, but then also those generated by ChatGPT. The report found ChatGPT kind of rivals human therapists. Can you break down more of what the study found and what you think this could mean for the future of mental health support?
Well, ChatGPT is a wonderful tool, and it does provide us access to really incredible information. The power of therapy has to do with the human connection. It's not only intellectual, giving the right answers to a patient at the right time, but it is your humanness as a therapist that the patient is connecting to, where they can have a corrective emotional experience, where they can reenact certain aspects of their life that are causing them harm. So while it's really great to have access to ChatGPT and the information it provides, it's really the human connection that is a large part of the healing process in therapy.
ChatGPT does not offer a ton of empathy, I'm guessing, or some of those just facial expressions you need when you're talking with someone who's a therapist.
Or life experience that one is providing to their patients.
That's a really good point.
We're not there yet. So I'm not being replaced by a bot yet. It could happen, but not yet.
You're not. We will not call on a bot for our weekly check-in. Dr. Ludwig, thank you so much. Good to have you.
Thank you.
Coming up, legendary R&B group Boyz II Men hit Capitol Hill.
After the break, more on their pay-for-play fight that's targeting radio stations that spin their biggest hits. That's next. Welcome back. Well, it's too soon to fully calculate the cost of the California wildfires. One thing is clear, the cost of insurance will go up. That means home prices would end up falling. It's all part of a new study that shows climate change is devaluing homes faster than expected. CNBC's senior climate and real estate correspondent Diana Olick explains in her continuing series on the rising risks of climate change.
The losses from the California wildfires may seem unimaginable now, but they were already part of a calculation that climate risk experts have been modeling recently as they attempt to measure the effects of climate change on home values.
So you're saying that at least 20% of U.S. homes are going to be devalued in some way because of climate change?
That's correct.
Dave Burt was one of the few to predict the risks in the subprime mortgage market over a decade ago, and he made a lot of money betting against those risky loans. He sees a similar pattern emerging now with climate change. As growing climate risk forces the insurance industry to reprice higher, home values will drop, because when the cost of owning a home rises, its value falls.
In the past, insurers have not increased prices because of these increasing weather events. That's all falling apart now.
The correction, he says, will be severe.
We think that those 20% of markets could be down 30% over the next 5 years.
In value.
In value, which is very similar to the 2007 to 2012 Great Recession experience.
And he's not alone. This at Treasury Secretary Bessent's confirmation hearing.
I think that the most immediate danger of a major economic collapse is going to come through the insurance industry, where you can't get mortgages, you can't sell properties at value.
Burt's prediction covers certain areas over the next 5 years, but others say the risk is much broader. By 2055, 84% of all U.S. homes may see some drop in value, totaling $1.47 trillion in losses, according to a new analysis by First Street, a climate risk firm.
Growing climate-related disaster risk has accelerated much more rapidly.
Ben Keyes is a professor of real estate and finance at the Wharton School.
That's going to accelerate the process of a revaluation where there's a disconnect between buyers and sellers, and ultimately assets are going to have to find a new equilibrium in order to clear the market.
And foreclosures add to that. After Hurricane Sandy in 2012, foreclosures rose by 46%. And after the 2008 floods in Ames, Iowa, they jumped 144%. The mortgage market is not unaware of these rising risks. Fannie Mae declined an interview request for this story, but we spoke with their chief climate officer 2 years ago on the same subject, as the mortgage giant was beginning to study climate risk in underwriting.
The amount of climate change is not necessarily always priced into the market, and consumers aren't really aware of what that's going to do to insurance premiums going forward.
The decisions that Fannie and Freddie make are guiding the mortgage market away from pricing climate risks directly.
And in the meantime, Dave Burt is betting again.
That can be either avoiding the most at-risk securities. It can also be hedging with mortgage credit derivatives.
Rising insurance costs will be the main factor in home price declines, but not the only one. Some communities might increase taxes to pay for resilience measures. Maintenance and energy costs may also go up. And despite all of this, last Friday, the Trump administration ordered FEMA staff to stop immediately implementation of the federal flood risk management standard. This standard ensured that public buildings, that's including schools, as well as bridges, roads, utilities, and other infrastructure that are damaged in a flood, would be rebuilt in a way that would make them less vulnerable to future flooding. That now all goes away. Back to you guys.
Wow. All right, Diana, thank you so much.
Let's get a look at what's making financial headlines this morning. Shoppers will have to say goodbye to Amazon's Inspire feature.
CNBC's Savannah Henao has that and some other money news. Savannah, good morning.
Hey, Joe. Hey, Savannah. Good morning to you. So Amazon is shutting down Inspire. This is the TikTok-style photo and video feed that was previously available in its mobile app. Inspire allows users to discover products and shop from content created by influencers, brands, and other customers. Now, Amazon confirming the move to TechCrunch, saying it regularly evaluates features to align with what customers say matters most. And, well, as a result, Inspire is no longer available. Amazon removing a feature at the end of the month that lets you download and back up Kindle books. It allows customers to download books they bought to a computer and then copy them manually to a Kindle over a USB connection. Amazon says you will still be able to send Kindle books to your Wi-Fi enabled devices by selecting the deliver or remove from device option. And Colonel Sanders is leaving Kentucky. KFC is moving its U.S. headquarters from Louisville to Plano, Texas. About 100 KFC employees will be required to relocate over the next 6 months. Now, parent company Yum Brands isn't entirely abandoning the Bluegrass State. The KFC Foundation plans to maintain a corporate office there and will build a new flagship restaurant in Louisville. There you have it.
How are they going to transport the secret recipe? I assume there'll be like security trucks and like a convoy.
Probably some kind of like armored truck. Yeah.
It could be like an adventure movie or something. All right, Savannah, thank you.
Thanks, Savannah.
You got it.
Well, a group of recording artists are coming together to urge Congress to change how over-the-air radio stations pay to play popular music. The legendary R&B group Boyz II Men recently took their fight to Capitol Hill, meeting with some of the most powerful lawmakers to push for a change in the law. NBC News Chief Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles caught up with the group to learn more about what they're fighting for. He joins us from Washington, D.C. Ryan, not your average day on Capitol Hill, I assume.
Yeah, they really drew a lot of attention, and for years, musicians have been benefiting from the exposure provided by AM and FM radio stations playing their music. And these stations have licensing agreements that pay royalties to music publishers and songwriters for the right to play that music, but the performers are left out of that equation. So these popular performers like Boyz II Men are now arguing that the music business has changed, and it's up to Congress to get radio stations to change with it. When Boyz II Men burst onto the music scene in the 90s, the #1 place people found their music was on the radio. I would never have been exposed to your music if it weren't for the radio, right? So you benefited from that a little bit too, didn't you?
100%.
Yeah,
we definitely did, as well as the radio stations. But now that that's not where normal people find their music from, it's like it's about time to pay people.
They argue it's time the compensation structure changed with the new business dynamics by requiring radio stations to pay artists for the right to play their songs.
These new artists, you know, they never had to rely on radio. You know what I'm saying? They rely on streaming, TikTok, and all of the things that's going to get their music out there.
Social media, streaming services, and the internet give music lovers many platforms to find new artists.
Good morning, you're on the radio.
But for radio DJs like Bill Keeler in Utica, New York, the connection between pop music and radio is special.
Radio has been the place where music gets to promote its artwork.
Radio stations pay licensing agreements that then lead to royalties to the music publishers and songwriters, but the performers are left out. Keeler argues it's the record companies, not the radio stations, that need to fix that imbalance.
I'm sure they should make more money. But you don't take it from the hand that feeds you.
But the performers aren't counting on the record companies. More than 300 recording artists, from Carly Simon to Jelly Roll, joined Boyz II Men in sending a letter to Congress pushing for the change. While Wanya, Nate, and Sean went all over Capitol Hill, meeting with senators and House leaders to make their case.
The system was a little weird, so it's only now in 2025 that people are actually seeing it, acknowledging it, and trying to right those wrongs.
Hoping to find a balance that everyone can benefit from so the music will live on.
Boyz II Men, ABC, BBD. And as for Boyz II Men, they remain the #1 selling R&B group of all time with 27 million records sold. They told me they're done making new music, but they still have an active tour schedule, performing 70 to 80 times a year, and of course, lobbying Congress in their spare time. Savannah.
All right, Ryan, very cool. Thank you so much.
All right, from Boyz II Men, cue the Jetsons theme song coming up. The future of travel might be a lot closer than you would think.
After the break, the California startup that's heading up, and away with, yes, look at your screen, a flying car. But is it really a modern automotive marvel or a pie-in-the-sky promotion? We'll take you along for the ride next. We are back, and so is this beauty right here. We first told you about this rare deep-sea devil anglerfish last week when it was captured by researchers off the coast of Spain's Canary Islands. Well, this morning, the bizarre animal made the front page of the New York Times for moving people on social media to an ocean of tears. Look at this.
I literally can't stop thinking about this fish. Can't even talk about it.
So, people are clearly emotional about their theories over why this little fish swam up from its home somewhere between 200 to 2,000 meters deep for a peek at life near the surface. But it's also not all sad. Her unique look is also sparking some pretty funny reactions and memes on NBC's social media accounts. Take a look at this. One person says, "Me coming out of my room for snacks." Another one says, "There are plenty of fish in the sea." It really is something to look at.
A special toothbrush for that. Yeah, it's extraordinary. All right. Finally this hour, we take a step into the future with one California startup that's taking groundbreaking technology to the sky.
NBC News correspondent Steve Patterson has an exclusive look.
All the advances in automotive tech, one issue only seems to be getting worse: gridlocked traffic. But this Silicon Valley startup says the solution comes straight from our imagination: the flying car.
You can actually use it today, and you can cut your commute at least in half, if not more.
Jim Duchovny says his company Aleph Aeronautics was able to create something we've been dreaming about since the Jetsons.
We're trying to make science fiction a reality.
And while not quite ready for the road, Duchovny says the flying car is about to take off. NBC News was given exclusive access to see their concept model with our own eyes.
If everything goes smoothly, I'm going to watch a car fly over another car. We'll see.
Sure enough, we watched it soar through the air over another car and land. But for all the magic of this moment, we were heavily restricted, forced to shoot at least half a football field away, and we never actually saw the driver entering or exiting the vehicle.
But you're not still all the way there yet, because you wouldn't let me in the cockpit yet.
There's a difference between you and the consumers. We still have some IP, intellectual property, which we're trying to protect.
So far, more than 3,200 early adopters have pre-ordered their $300,000 all-electric flying car. And the company is aiming to begin production by next year. But practicality might be where the rubber meets the sky. Only a few countries allow for the kind of road-to-air reality Duchovny envisions.
It's going to be a slow, incremental approach, which is good for legal integration, which is good for consumer integration.
But he says as demand grows, regulations will catch up with the tech. For now, it's still that cutting-edge pie in the sky. Steve Patterson, NBC News, Silicon Valley.
What could possibly go wrong? Everyone in the air. Because people are such good drivers.
It's not really seeming like it's ready.
It's a good start, all right? Not quite the Jetsons, but...
Sounds like whatever.
We'll get there. Fascinating. Thank you, Steve. That's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Stay with us, though. The news continues right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.